Here's a guy from PragerU to totally misinterpret the point of the First Amendment.
What is religious freedom? Why is it important? And why is it now under threat? Hold on a second, I can hear you saying. Religious freedom is threatened? Who doesn't have religious freedom in the United States? You can be a Protestant, a Catholic, a Jew, a Muslim, or a Wiccan.
This is the face this dude makes in reaction to Americans' right to be Wiccan.
You can believe in anything or nothing. This was true, but not anymore. Seems like almost every week a new dispute arises between people of faith and government agencies alleging that believers are violating the rights of non-believers or simply violating government edicts. Given that the search for religious freedom was central to the founding of America, this is quite a reversal.
No, it isn't. The Pilgrims fled religious persecution. Specifically, they wanted to be separate from the Church of England. Their freedom of religion necessitated freedom from religious authorities. You can't have freedom of religion without freedom from religion. The whole point of the Establishment Clause of the First Amendment was to keep religion from getting power from the state by forbidding the establishment of any official religion. The founders didn't want anything analogous to the Church of England, which is the official state church of the United Kingdom to this day. Most of the disputes between people of faith and government agencies involve people of faith trying to usurp government power. Government-backed religion was precisely what the Pilgrims went to North America to escape. Most of these challenges to religious authority are a fulfillment of the founders' ideals, not a reversal of them.
As Thomas Paine put it in his influential 1776 pamphlet, Common Sense, "This new world hath been the asylum for the persecuted lovers of civil and religious liberty from every part of Europe." It wasn't an accident that the first freedom listed in the Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments to the Constitution, is about religious liberty. Here's what it says: Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. This meant the new United States would have no government-sponsored religion, as Europe had at the time, and no restrictions on how you practiced your religion.
Yes, and you'll notice that the wording places the Establishment Clause before the Free Exercise Clause. This wording makes sense because in order to prevent curtailing the free exercise of religion, you must first prevent any religion from gaining state endorsement or power. Congress is prohibited from establishing any official religion for the United States. And this should include any government support or endorsement of a religion, regardless of whether it is explicitly made an official religion.
British historian Paul Johnson draws a stark and telling contrast between the two great revolutions of the 18th century. The essential difference between the American Revolution and the French Revolution is that the American Revolution, in its origins, was a religious event, whereas the French Revolution was an anti-religious event.
If the abolition of feudalism is an anti-religious event, then that speaks well of anti-religious events.
That fact was to shape the American Revolution and determine the nature of the independent state it brought into being. Now, 2 centuries after the Bill of Rights, freedom of religion, one of the main goals of the American Revolution, has morphed into freedom from religion, one of the main goals of the French Revolution.
No, it didn't morph into it. First of all, it's not a Power Ranger, and secondly, as I already explained, you can't have freedom of religion without freedom from religion. The Pilgrims' freedom of religion was curtailed by the fact that the Church of England denied them freedom from their religious institution. Freedom from religion is a necessary prerequisite of freedom of religion, not some liberal leftist contortion of it.
That's not what any American should wish for.
Any American who wishes for freedom of religion should wish for freedom from religion.
Here's why. Because when they come for your religious freedom, they're coming for all of your freedom. It's the totalitarian tell, the giveaway. This is what the founders understood and why they were so insistent that religious liberty be in the Constitution.
And a probable reason why the Establishment Clause, which forbid giving religion state power, was listed prior to the Free Exercise Clause, was because they knew that keeping religion out of government was a necessary first step to protecting its free exercise.
To them, freedom of liberty was tantamount to freedom of thought. If you aren't free to think as you wish, you can't claim to be free.
It's a good thing nobody is being locked up for what they believe then.
They were right. There is no example in history of a regime suppressing religious freedom and not suppressing other freedoms. One of the first things the communists did in Russia after the Russian Revolution in 1917 was to close nearly every church and take control of all religious life in the Soviet Union, Christian, Jewish, and Muslim. To this day, all religious life in China is strictly controlled by the Chinese Communist government.
What does this have to do with the U.S.? What is happening in the U.S. that you think is even remotely comparable to these examples or a slippery slope to them?
Why do repressive governments fear religious freedom? Because it challenges the authority of the state more than any other freedom. People who adhere to a religion believe that there's something higher than the state, and no repressive government can tolerate such a belief.
Well, it certainly can when people who believe that there's something higher than the state are allowed to use the state as an instrument of that higher authority. There are few threats to freedom and benefits to state power greater than that, because then opposition to the state gets framed as opposition to God. The Pilgrims came to North America because they experienced this firsthand.
That makes religion the first target of those who want ever more power and ever more control over its citizens.
Sometimes it's the first target. The rest of the time, it's the first thing they co-opt. It's not hard to think of present-day draconian regimes who claim to love religion.
That's why, even if you're not religious, if you care about freedom, you should care deeply about religious liberty.
And if you care about freedom of religion, you should care deeply about freedom from religion.
My job is to protect religious liberty, and let me tell you, the trends are troubling. 8 years ago, my caseload was 47. Last year, it was over 300. Here are some recent examples. Bremerton, Washington high school football coach Joe Kennedy was first suspended and then fired for going to a knee after a football game to say a brief, silent prayer.
Okay, first of all, since when are you folks in favor of kneeling at football games? And secondly, a high school football coach is a government employee acting in a government capacity. If he does this while he's on the clock, he's effectively being paid by the government to pray. Freedom of religion does not entail being entitled to be paid by the government to pray. If he wants to pray, he should do it the way Jesus told all Christians to when he said, "When you pray, you are not to be like the hypocrites, for they love to stand and pray in the synagogues and on the street corners, or in this case the football fields, so that they may be seen by men. Truly I say to you, they have their reward in full. But you, when you pray, go into your inner room, close your door, and pray to your Father who is in secret."
A three-judge panel for the Ninth Circuit Federal Court of Appeals concluded that because Coach Kennedy could be seen engaging in religious expression by students and fans, the school had the right to fire him.
And Jesus clearly would not have approved of his behavior either.
The city of Houston is attempting to ban a small Orthodox Jewish community from worshiping in the home of its rabbi. Given that the neighborhood includes a rehab house, a Ghanaian church, and an East Indian cultural center, the city's action is hard to fathom.
Yeah, it's almost like religion is not really what they had an issue with here. I couldn't find any news articles about this, and this dude doesn't go into any details, so I suspect there was something going on here that he's not revealing to us. Also, why did this dude chuckle at the mention of a Ghanaian church?
A peace cross in Bladensburg, Maryland has stood for almost 100 years in honor of 49 young men who died fighting in World War I. Yet in 2017, a court ordered the cross to be torn down. One judge offered a novel compromise. She suggested we chop the arms off the cross to make it less offensive. Fortunately, we won that case 7-2 at the United States Supreme Court, and that cross is still standing.
Then what's the problem?
America is also still standing.
Yeah, thanks in no small part to the Establishment Clause protecting America from your theocrat buddies.
But it won't be for much longer. Not as the free country the founders envisioned, if we don't take these threats to religious freedom seriously. The great historian of post-revolutionary America, Alexis de Tocqueville, understood this very well. When men attack religious beliefs, they are following their emotions, not their interest. Tyranny may be able to do without faith, but freedom cannot.
The U.S. government is not trying to abolish faith. Quite the opposite. The whole point of keeping religion out of government is to protect faith, so nobody ends up having to flee a state-backed church again.
To everyone who helps me out on Patreon, you're a big help. Thanks so much.